Hello, Austin! Welcome to Lone Star Politics. I hope you had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. And for those of you watching at home, I'd like to welcome my newest addition to the wardrobe, my new tie that my mother gave me for the 4th of July. So now we're going to have 2 American flag ties in the rotation instead of 1. Host Dr. Love, the Doctor of Politics, and here we have an actual real doctor in the studio with us to tell us about some of the greatest misconceptions in the oral health care industry. Welcome, Dr. Ellie Phillips.
Hi, thanks Robert for inviting me here.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. Now, Dr. Phillips, before we get started, can you tell us about your experience in dentistry and your expertise and kind of what led you to where you are today?
Sure, I'd love to. I love talking about my story. Is an interesting one because I was one of England's first women dentists. It was pretty difficult to become a dentist back in that era, which was in the 60s. And in fact, they insisted that we would have top grades in 3 science subjects, chemistry, physics, and biology. And unless we got top grades, 4.0 average as it would be in America, we weren't allowed to even consider going to medical school. I became a dentist and became very disillusioned because in England we have national health dentistry, which just goes to prove that free dentistry is not necessarily good dentistry. And I think most people know that the British teeth are maybe the worst teeth in the world. And it's a joke because
kind of like Austin Powers.
Yeah, you know, we've had free dentistry really since World War II. And people could go and have any treatment done with no cost whatsoever to them. What I saw, though, was that people were having their teeth taken out. They were having huge fillings. It was all very unhealthy. And there was a far better way. So I actually left the country the day I graduated, and I became...
The day you graduated?
The day I graduated. I got on a plane and I flew to Switzerland, and I worked very hard to become a Swiss dentist in a basically holistic office, an office where we used natural ways to protect teeth. We used foods, we used some newfangled things. These panoramic x-rays had just been developed, but we used a lot of food and what today would be a sort of holistic approach to dentistry. We did implants back then, this was in the 70s, and we discovered that you really could control dental disease. And that was the sort of basis for me, so that within a few years after graduating, I went back and opened a private office in a country where all dentistry was free. You actually had to pay to see me. And people paid because if you came to see me, I would help you not need fillings.
You were able to get people to come and see you and pay for your services even though they could get free dental service.
Exactly, because they knew what they were going to get if they went to the free service. And they chose, first of all, it was the mothers who brought their children to me, and then as they saw their children growing up without any cavities, in a country where most people have cavities by the time they're 4 years old.
Oh my.
I mean, children of 4 or 5, I mean, there are children who have no teeth left at the age of 14, 15 in England.
Now you mentioned children. You have an expertise in both pediatric dentistry and geriatric dentistry.
That's correct.
Can you tell us about your thesis work and how that led up to that expertise?
Well, I had to choose a subject to study in great detail. And the subject that I chose to study was fluoride. And the reason I chose fluoride for my thesis was because I was a mother myself at that stage. I had, in the late 1970s, been a huge believer in fluoride. I always wanted people to have lovely teeth. That's why I became a dentist. I hated the dentist, and I wanted to use everything in my power. And I was a believer, like most dentists, in the 70s, that if you drank fluoride, especially as a young child, your teeth would be smoother, shinier. They would be special moon-shaped molars, they call them. They would be, you know, really smooth without all the crevices. And that these teeth would be gorgeous and white and shiny and strong. And so every night before bed, I would give my children drops of fluoride in their baby milk. And imagining that when their permanent teeth grew, they would be white and wonderful. Most of your listeners know what moderate fluorosis looks like, and my first daughter, when her permanent teeth, because you see nothing in the baby teeth, these are the teeth growing in the jaws as you give the fluoride. This is the problem for babies. You don't see the damage until the permanent teeth erupt at 6, 7, 8 years old.
Now, when you say moderate fluorosis, you're talking about the damage that is done to teeth through the ingestion of fluoride.
Correct.
And the incorporation of fluoride into the tooth enamel.
Well, what actually happens is the fluoride, if it's even mildly strong in a baby's, if a baby ingests even a tiny amount, the first cells, this is what's so ironic, the first cells to be killed by fluoride are enamel-forming cells. They're called ameloblasts, and they are the actual cells that lay down enamel. So I was giving my children fluoride, and they were ingesting it, these little babies of 1, 2 years old, and it was traveling through their body, and when it got to their tooth in the jaw, the little cells that lay down enamel died. So the outer surface of the enamel had formed, but then beneath the surface there was a complete void. No enamel formed because I killed the cells that form enamel. And then you have the dentin on the inside of that. And it is this optical look, it's how your teeth look. White teeth are not, they're actually, it's the reflection that makes them white. Reflection off crystals.
For the dental fluorosis that makes them white?
The problem with fluorosis, the brown spots, which my first daughter had, were actually because there was a complete void, and the light goes, it doesn't reflect off the surface at all. It just goes straight through to the yellow underneath the tooth, in the dentin that's underneath the enamel. So
fluorosis is not only the replacement of calcium with fluoride in the teeth, but it's the prevention of the development of the enamel.
Fluorosis is actually the prevention of proper development of the enamel, correct. Moderate fluorosis actually kills off patches underneath the outer surface. So beneath the outer surface, I mean, and the surface of enamel is very, very small. I'm not sure the exact microns, but you're talking about a tiny space. But within this tiny space, you're killing off, so it's a void. So the light doesn't shine properly off the tooth, and the tooth appears brown. Sometimes there's no enamel there at all, and you actually have no enamel. It's a complete void. My child had brown spots, my first child. My second child had these white spots, which again are simply smaller voids. It isn't that the enamel's actually changed as much as it's just not there. This is why you can't really do anything about it. There was no way to make it stronger again. My only remedy was to actually put plastic fillings in these voids. And that made me really angry. That made me really upset.
It made you upset that fluoride was something that you previously supported and you were trained on and told that it was good through every dental agency?
Absolutely, and they even trained us to mock the people who didn't believe in it. I mean, that was the irony of all of this. That here I was, I never did mock anybody because I don't think that's the way you do things, but I believed as it seemed to make sense. And then in the early 80s, I saw with my own eyes what had happened to my own children, and I was aware of why they had these brown teeth. And my second daughter, a couple of years younger, had almost like clouds all over her teeth. I mean, it's little white spots everywhere that are very weak. She actually went on to become a swimmer, and in the chlorine of the swimming pool, if she didn't have me as her mother, I was telling her the other day, she's lucky I'm her mother, because without the prevention that I've been able to give her, the tricks and the ways and the foods and the way we deal with strengthening teeth, if she hadn't had that help, she would probably have crowns on every tooth in her head at this point.
Because of the chlorine in the water would have
corroded even further her already weak teeth.
Her teeth that are weakened because the fluoride prevented the proper development of her enamel.
Correct.
Now, tell me about your training in that they told you to mock those that disagree with you. Rather than thwart them with science and studies, they told you to make fun of them.
Correct. And it was, you know, people who didn't believe in fluoride were the kook nuts. I was a bit of a kook nut anyway because I actually was a believer in foods, and that foods could produce healthful ends if you chose the right foods. And I think America still doesn't have enough respect for the fact that there are foods that can help us actually far better than these artificially formulated concoctions.
Now, why do you think that the established dental profession chose to train the future of the dental profession to mock rather than to address with evidence or to address the concerns of those who opposed fluoride? Why do you think they had such a firm stance as far as pro-fluoridation? Why was that such a big thing for them, and why did they train you in the manner that they did?
Because I think if you go back through the story, and this was what I did in the library in the early 80s, was go back through the story of how did this all happen. And, you know, it's intimately connected with the fact that fluoride was found to have some benefits and make teeth less able to decay, which we can talk about in a minute. The thing was that there's a lot of intrigue behind the story. The Aluminum Company of America is obviously involved. Fluoride is a byproduct of the aluminum industry. People were taken from the Aluminum Company of America. People with high paid positions ended up in government positions where they were able to make choices and decisions about putting fluoride in our drinking water. The science did not support it. The science, going back, looking at the old science, there was a lot of question. Actually, in 2001, I attended the National Institute of Health, had a big symposium, and they looked at all the ways that we try to prevent disease, dental disease, prevent cavities and gum disease. They looked at toothbrushing, and there is no study to show that toothbrushing actually stops cavities. There is no study to show that flossing prevents cavities at all. There isn't a single randomized clinical trial, not one. You know, and this, if you start saying this, it makes people very uncomfortable today, even though the science does not support it. There is a mantra, and I have alienated myself from a lot of dentistry because I go around telling people the truth is that there is, you know, don't worry about flossing. You want to learn the truth. You want to learn how to have a clean, healthy mouth. Flossing is not going to save you. So, flossing may have a place, but it isn't a forefront front runner. And it's the same thing with fluoride.
So you've been marginalized because you've questioned what is the, quote, traditional dental knowledge and what is the accepted practice in the industry, just because you've questioned it and looked at the research yourself.
Absolutely, and if you reverse a cavity, you would think a dentist would be overjoyed. I actually helped a child reverse a cavity with over-the-counter mouth rinses and a food product and some dietary changes. And the dentist, who was supposed to do the filling, and the filling didn't get done, actually put an ethics violation to my local dental society because I had interfered with the treatment plan. I had actually helped this child avoid a cavity.
Because you healed a child,
yeah,
you were penalized by the local dentistry association.
Absolutely. I in fact asked for a hearing, which they didn't give me. They simply took the records out of the file or whatever it was and told me it had gone away. I was really too busy to be bothered. But I later on, when I did have time, went back to have a consultation with the president of the Dental Society to say, where is dentistry? Where is it really at this point? If we are supporting things, if we are against people who are healing teeth, you know, that's so bizarre. Austin should be the front runner. You guys here are so wonderful, and you talk about freedom, liberty, and empowerment. This is what I do in dentistry. The public need to know the truth. They need to be free of this fear that they require the authority, in this case dentists, to look after them. You can be empowered. You can look after yourself. You don't need these things given to you.
How are you empowering people? This sounds like a wonderful thing to empower people to be able to control their own destiny concerning their oral health.
I try to do what I learned in Switzerland, which is teach people how to eat at the end of every meal something that is tooth protective. Try not to have long periods of acidity in your mouth. Try to understand which foods and which drinks damage your teeth and which ones will help them. Which toothpaste is safe to use, and believe me, most of them are not. And it's not about fluoride in toothpaste. I mean, there are other things that are far more damaging.
Let's talk about what foods are damaging. That I didn't know there were foods that are damaging to my teeth.
Oh, certainly. Citrus fruits, for example, will literally pull minerals out of your teeth.